There have been a lot of talk about why people should quit vaping, how much worse it is compared to smoking, and the many effects vaping can cause. And guess what? This is another one. Vaping and smoking are very similar, as having many differences. Smoking is actual tobacco, whereas vaping is a simulation of smoking tobacco. Despite this, vaping still results in the same consequences as smoking, regardless of it not actually being a cigarette. Having relatives that have been smoking most of their lives, I can't stand by and watch people harm themselves by putting chemicals into their bodies just because they think it is cool or a way to distract themselves or relief of depression. Today, I would like to think about how vaping damages your heart and lungs, how vaping is as addictive as smoking, and how vaping can influence one's mental health. The first thing that I will be talking about is how vaping can damage the lungs and heart. According to the article titled Vaping and Your Heart: What We Know So Far, published in 2020, e-cigarette vapor and secondhand vapor contain a number of chemicals that have been linked to serious lung problems. Diacetyl, cam- a butter-flavored chemical that's been linked to lung disease; formaldehyde, a chemical used in building materials and household products that could cause cancer; acrolein, a herbicide linked to lung injury and COPD, also known as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, that could cause lung cancer; benzene, a carcinogenic chemical used to create other chemicals such as plastic dyes and pesticides; heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead. Vape Tin, and lead. Based on the article, decades of research prove that smoking contributes to heart and lung cancer. While research into vaping is still ongoing, recent studies have found that it's probably no better than traditional tobacco products. E-cigarettes emit an aerosol that consists of ultrafine particles in higher concentration than cigarette smoke. Exposure to these particles could exacerbate asthma and constrict arteries, which could cause a heart attack. Most e-cigarettes provide nicotine, which is highly addictive and harmful to the cardiovascular system. It raises blood pressure and spikes your adrenaline, which increases your heart rate and the chance of having a heart attack. In fact, a 2017 survey found that the odds of a heart attack increased by 42% among e-cigarette users compared to non-smokers. That's the same risk level as having diabetes. Not only does vaping damage your lungs and heart, but this leads me to bring up the next topic that is worth mentioning. Vaping can be very addicting. Most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, which is very addictive. Because your brain and body become accustomed to nicotine over time, you may experience nicotine withdrawal symptoms if you stop vaping. Another factor why vaping is so addictive is because of the many flavors they come in, which attracts the young generation to buy them and therefore get them hooked on it forever. According to the article titled Nicotine Addiction from Vaping is a Bigger Problem Than Teens Realized, published in 2019, the reward system called the mesolimbic dopamine system is one of the more primitive parts of the brain. It developed as a positive reinforcement for behavior we need to survive, like eating. Because the mechanism is so ingrained in the brain, it is especially hard to resist. When a teen inhales vapor laced with nicotine, the drug is quickly absorbed through the blood vessels lining the lungs. It reaches the brain in about 10 seconds. There, nicotine particles fit lock and key into a type of acetylcholine receptor located on nerve cells throughout the brain. Because vaping is so addicting, it can affect a human being even further, which results in long-term effects. Which brings me to my next topic. Vaping can lead to depression, anxiety, and hyperactivity. According to the article titled Vaping and Mental Health: What's the Connection?, published in 2021, researchers have studied several mental health issues associated with vaping in adolescents and young adults. Dependence on nicotine has been associated with impulsivity, mood disorders, anxiety, suicidality, and depression. The highly addictive nicotine has been studied and reported to affect certain brain regions that possess a risk for long-term damage as well. Vaping is often used as a coupling strategy by individuals suffering from depression, anxiety, or other mental health conditions. However, it could potentially worsen the existing mental health conditions. Nicotine interrupts the cerebral dopamine pathway, leading to an increase in depressive symptoms. According to another article called Study Finds Depression Risk Greater for E-cigarette Users, published in 2019, when the researchers analyzed the data, they found that people who vaped, both current and former, were more likely to report a history of depression. Exposure to nicotine over a long period of time can disrupt the cerebral dopamine pathway, increase stress sensitivity, and disrupt the coping mechanisms that normally help protect against depression, the authors say. Vaping and smoking are very similar as well as having many differences. Smoking is actual tobacco, whereas vaping is the smoke of the tobacco. Despite this, vaping still results in the same consequences as smoking, regardless of it not being an actual cigarette. Today, I have talked about how vaping damages your heart and lungs, how vaping is as addictive as smoking, and how vaping can influence one's mental health. I don't expect anyone to take my words into account, but I hope that I have somehow made you consider and take into account the words that I have mentioned today. So here's something to consider. Don't let your future go up in smoke.